We're very excited to have you. Sir Martin Sorrell.
You get easily excited then.
No, no, it's not every day we have a legend of marketing to talk to us about.
Legend in my own mind.
Okay, well, you know, ChatGPT will differ on that if I ChatGPT'd you earlier. So, well, first of all, thank you again. Thank you for being here. We have so many questions, so we're excited to get your point of view on many topics. I'll start with an easy one, which is around Mexico. Mexico is developing marketing. There's a lot of growth. We have a young digital native consumer base, which is growing. Adoption to e-commerce is accelerating. And we see a lot of marketing teams that now own their own channels, right? Through the apps, the loyalty programs, retail media. How do you see this in a country like Mexico becoming something that marketing and technology teams can align to drive both growth and trust in this environment?
Well, it's good to be here, and a big thank you to Walmart here in Mexico, and you, Mariana, for doing this. So I think you have to think about what's happening in the industry as a whole. So advertising is a $1 trillion industry, or was last year. Of that $1 trillion, 700 billion is in digital, and 300 billion is in traditional. The 700 billion that's in digital is growing at around 10, 15, 20%. In Q2 of this year, it grew by about 16%. Q1 of this year, 15%. Last year, it was a bit more varied, but minimum of 10 going up to 20. Traditional, the 300 billion, is going backwards. For the last 3 or 4 years, at least, traditional broadcasting, free-to-air, has been declining around 10 to 15% if you didn't have live sport. If you had live sport, probably about 5 to 10%. Of course, we were talking about the World Cup next year, which will be here in Mexico and in Canada and in the USA, and that's a good example of what I'm talking about. But essentially, when we started S4 and Monks 6 years ago, digital was 50% of the market, it's now 70%. The structure of the market is also very important to think about. Google accounts for 250 billion of spend, so it's 25% of the total. It's about a third of the digital piece. Meta is about 150 billion, Amazon is 60, and TikTok outside China is 40. So those 4 platforms, if you add those 4 numbers together, 500 billion, 1/2 of the market, and 5/7 or 70% of digital. So strong concentration. You add in Alibaba, Tencent, and ByteDance, which is the Chinese part of, or the Chinese parent of TikTok, you're really talking about 6 platforms that dominate the industry and will continue to do so. One other thing to think about is those 6 companies, and indeed others such as Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Adobe, Oracle, Salesforce, are probably spending about $500 billion a year on building out AI capacity. So it is unlikely that those platforms will lose the dominant position they have. So Mexico is slightly different. Digital is about 60% of the market here. It's a bit more traditional as a market. It's a bit more TV orientated. But to your heart of your question, it is going to escalate more into an even stronger digital economy. And the mobile phone obviously dominates communication, even in a country like Mexico with 135 million people.
Wow. I mean, I think we can also attest that over the past few years, digital has definitely been taking more dominance, but more so in the past year, the way we do digital has been different, right? Now in the AI era, we just heard Jonathan talk about a lot of new features featuring AI, and AI is blurring the lines in how we used to do traditional marketing. There were very defined lines of what the marketeer did compared to the person in technology, compared to your agency partners and so on, or the team in data science. But now those lines are starting to blur. How do you suggest, or what do you see of marketing teams collaborating more closely with technology to drive relevant marketing, but particularly relying on all of the new features we have at our disposal to both personalize and optimize, but with scale and speed?
Yeah. So I think in our industry, I'm not talking about clients,
Yep.
but in our industry, there's been a feeling, a very traditional feeling. They look back to Mad Men and Don Draper, and they think of things in a more intuitive way, and they see data and technology being the enemy of the industry, and I don't think it is. I mean, we're now living in an age, or in a new age, where data is at the heart of everything we do, as you've seen from the presentations from Walmart and Walmart Connect people already. And technology is revolutionizing the way that we do it. And let me just sort of elaborate on what we see, and we've touched on already in the presentations that we've heard, the impact of AI on our industry. So there are really 5 areas where we see huge impact, either currently or coming, in terms of our industry. The first is what we call visualization and copywriting. We can now collapse the time that it takes to produce a commercial, a 30-second TV commercial, or now digital commercial, from literally months to days, and literally from millions of dollars to hundreds of thousands. This is having a huge impact on what we see. And I would throw out a challenge to all the clients that we have in the room here. If you think about your media cost, I would say that create costs should be no greater than 10% of your media cost.
Yep.
What AI is enabling us to do is to drastically reduce the cost of very high quality creative, because the technology is developing at light speed and bringing down the create costs. So that's one thing. The second thing, which has also been touched on, is personalization at scale. What I call the Netflix model, but on steroids. We work closely with Netflix. Historically, we might have produced, in theory, about 1 million, 1.25 million assets for a series like Narcos or a series like Squid Games. We can now, with AI, produce at a much greater scale. Probably wouldn't use more than 50 to 70,000 assets, but now we can do it at even greater scale. And we're using the first-party data, which Walmart has in profusion here in Mexico with 74 million customers, and using the signals from the platforms. So personalization at scale is now available with visualization and copywriting, and those 2 areas we're seeing the greatest and most immediate impact. The third area is media planning and buying. And the advertising holding companies, of which there are 6, probably don't like to feature this too heavily, but there are about 250,000 people working in the media planning and buying industry worldwide. Most of that work is done manually or semi-automatically. That is not going to be the case in the future. The algorithms that you see developed by Google around PMax, around Performance Max, and by Meta around Advantage Plus, enable clients not only to produce content, but also to plan and buy that content. So particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises, which is the heartland of Google and Meta and their business, particularly for those clients, you can see a fully mechanized, automated system which creates copy and plans and buys campaigns in an integrated way. That area is being attacked by the platforms and the algorithms, but has not really started to gain momentum. The fourth area is general efficiency, and let me just give you an example. This week, we will be in Amsterdam for the IBC Broadcasting Conference, and we'll be presenting with NVIDIA, with AWS and Adobe, a technology which will lower the cost of outside broadcasting by something like 80 to 90% using AI and cloud. So what we're seeing is both agency and client reduce the cost of their job significantly. And the final area, which I think is the most interesting, is the democratization of knowledge. If you went to McKinsey or Bain or BCG and said, what is the span of management that you can manage as a CEO or a CFO, they would say something like 12 to 13 people. At NVIDIA, Jensen Huang has 51 direct reports. How does he do it? He does it because NVIDIA, using AI, spreads knowledge across the organization, so it flattens and horizontalizes the company very significantly. And I remember when I was running WPP, I came to Mexico and we were doing work, Ogilvy it was doing work for Mextech. And the president, we were doing branding work, the president said to me, this was 2003-04, that the internet had revolutionized the access to knowledge. Mexican villages didn't have libraries, yep, but the internet was effectively the library, and kids would have access to knowledge. AI does that on an even greater scale, and for companies, it's going to make them much more efficient and share knowledge and build teams much more effective results. So those 5 areas, the 2 areas which are really hot at the moment are personalization at scale and the visualization of copywriting. Anybody that wants to see any films that we've produced agentically can contact me. I'll give you my email address, yep, which is martin@s4capital.com. And by all means, email me and I'll send you, not all at once, please, but I'll email you some examples of work we've done for Puma, for General Motors, for Google Pixel, for Tensor, which is a Chinese EV brand, just recently, to show you the sort of work that can be done agentically.
That's fantastic. I think as marketeers, we heard 3 of the words we like to hear all the time, which is faster, cheaper, and may I say better as well?
Yes, well, the quality of the technology is improving at light speed. VO3 at Google, Runway, Luma. There's a Chinese company called Minimax, which is really doing some will be IPO'd on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange shortly. These are all platforms that enable you to automate content at scale very quickly. Now, Runway, for example, is producing short-form feature films and animation of a quality that we've, if you write to me, email me, I'll send you, you'll see a film from Puma 6 months ago, where the technology was less developed. We've now done work, as I said, with Google, with P&G, for Braun, and others, where the technology is improving at light speed. So it is faster. I would argue, and it will improve even more, better. We often argue about whether we should use the word cheaper. It is certainly more efficient and cheaper. And the other thing, of course, it enables you to do is to do things at scale that you've never been able to do before. So it's faster, better, cheaper, and more.
Fabulous. I think we all like those 4 words. I think we can agree with that. As we're talking about personalization, you brought this up, and we can do it now at scale. There's always the risk that when you automate too much, you lose personality, you lose authenticity. and you start seeing a sea of sameness, right? I think all of us who have generated an image in DALL-E know that it's almost like the same woman every time. How do you mix the speed of which we can do while still keeping that human intuition and authenticity within it?
Well, I think you've got to look at these tools as tools, not as replacing human beings.
Fair enough.
So, as I said before, data and technology are not our enemy, they are our friend. They make the work better. They make it faster, and they make it cheaper, and there's more of it. And I think that's the key thing. I would argue, James Quincy of Coca-Cola, one of your major customers, said, if everybody's personalizing at scale, that means it will be more difficult to differentiate at the consumer. And he's right. And what it means is the human dimension actually becomes more important, not less important, but harnessing the data for insights and harnessing the technology to be able to make it, you're able to deliver it at high quality and very effectively. So look at it as being a companion, as an adjunct to human. Now, I do think, and this may not be popular, but I will say it, I do think net at the end of the day, AI will reduce employment in our industry. I think visualization and copywriting, there will be fewer copywriters and visualizers. Personalization at scale, probably more scope for employment. Media planning and buying less. General efficiency, probably half of done, 6 of one and half dozen of the other. And then democratization will give more opportunity. But net, I do think it will reduce the labor content in our industry. What it does for clients, we have to see how it plays out. But it may well be that this is a form of automation that it's certainly going to reduce the drudgery, the more commonplace, maybe elevate jobs and make senior jobs even more important and take away a lot of the mechanistic work. The other thing that it does, we have a product at Monks called Monks Flow. We have about 10 product suites which basically simplify workflow. I mean, AI is seen as being technologically very sophisticated, but what it basically does is simplify the workflow. We all know that the process of developing creative work is a long and very complicated work. One of our major packaged goods clients, I won't say which, calculates that it takes 200 days to produce a commercial. That one client told us that that was the process. We said we could do it in 15 days. And we produced, again, if people write to me, I'll send you the commercial. Often people think of agentic work being very tactical, mid-funnel and lower funnel. It can be upper funnel too and strategic. And in this particular case, we took a strategic commercial, a brand commercial, and produced it in 12 days and with strong branding resonance. So I do think people underestimate the effectiveness of agentic AI work in not just simplifying the process and reducing the cost, but also in producing better work.
Yeah, and I guess it's what we do with those efficiencies that matter, and that's how we bring the humans back into the equation by elevating their roles. Let me switch topics a little bit, because I think we would all love to hear your take on retail media, as that's what we're here for. So we believe in Walmart that retail media gives teams direct access now to the consumer and a lot more influence than it did in the past because they're present at the point of purchasing. Do you see retail media as becoming the next walled garden? And how should all of the teams here, the marketing teams here, prepare to maximize this new form of power?
Well, I mentioned the statistics for digital growth in Q1 and Q2 of this year, which have continued at actually accelerated rates, 15% and 16% Q1 and Q2. Retail media has grown even faster. Retail media is growing probably at, I think the projection for this year is about 19% in North America, and probably the same would be the case in the Mexican market. So it has become a really important source of opportunity, new walled gardens. I mean, interestingly, originally it was defensive. Now it has become offensive. Retailers like Walmart and others are building their own walled gardening using their data sets, which are extremely effective and extremely efficient and have huge scale, and they're using that to develop content. Now, this gets into controversial territory, but I'll go ahead. It will be somewhat heretical or sacrilegious for me, as somebody in our industry, to say it, but I'm going to say it. I think a lot more work that we are producing is mid-funnel and lower funnel. Less work, rightly or wrongly, I happen to think rightly, is upper funnel. What retail media has is much more immediacy and much more impact from an activation and performance point of view, and is easier, in my view, to measure than traditional media. I mean, the famous quote from Sam Wanamaker or Lord Leverhulme, the founder of Unilever, was, "I know I waste half my media budget, my advertising budget, but I don't know which half." I think it is true today that there's still a part of it that we don't know quite what the impact is, but it's much less than half. And with digital media, it is much less. And with retail media, there's huge opportunity to measure, to get insight, original insight, and measure performance. And if I'm right, or if the trend is to more mid-funnel and lower funnel, that really does play to retail media's strengths. You know, point of purchase, consumer journey, in-store, ECM, all these things are really impacted very positively and effectively by retail media.
Yeah, I think we saw some great examples just now on how it's easier to measure, easier to go back to the business and be able to demonstrate value. So I definitely agree with that. Okay, so last question to bring us home. And I'm sure a lot of people here in the audience would love your take on this as well. If you were advising a Mexican company, there's many represented here today, on a single thing that they need to focus on and collaborate with their partners, their technology teams, leveraging their own channels or any other form of marketing, what would your bet be for the next 12 months that can really help them redefine the next 10 years?
Okay, so let me try and respond. So I think there are three things that the clients in this room outside have got to really think about. The first is agility. Every CEO of clients and agency always says that their organizations are agile. That may not necessarily be the case. I'm sure Walmart is extremely agile, but others may not be quite so. So agility in a real-time world. We have a go-to-market called real-time branding, which is about the need for immediacy. I mentioned 200 days to produce an ad, can't work. So agility is key. Secondly, and this is strange coming from an agency guy, I think clients have to take back control of a number of things that after the great financial crisis in 2008, they outsourced. CFOs had great power after the crisis, and there was a lot of outsourcing going on. So for example, media planning, data management, I'll come on to that in a second, critically important functions inside clients, in my view. And the third area is first-party data. Any client that doesn't have strong first-party data in an integrated data system, preferably one platform, is not really fit for purpose. With that as background, I would urge every client, remembering the statistics I quoted at the beginning about the growing importance of platforms, including retail media, is to get closer to those platforms. So clients have to develop closer relationships with the digital platforms, including a retail platform like Walmart Connect. And they have to build a closer, and we as agencies have to increasingly become validators, work closely with the platforms to become validators for what the algorithms indicate clients should do. I mean, to put it crudely, you wouldn't give all your media money to Televisa or Globo and say, go and spend it for me, because they have big positions or had big positions, but they're not the total market. So the agency is validating what the algorithms spit out in a digital world.
Well, I think we can all agree that if we become a little bit more agile, if we take ownership and responsibility of what we're putting out there, and if we include first-party data in all of our decisions, which we finally now have available at our disposals at a speed and at a quality that we didn't maybe have in the past, that then if we sprinkle that with some AI, we can get to the promise.
Yeah, I would just say it is a golden era.
It is.
It's a new one. It's a different golden era to the one that we've gone through the last 30 or 40 years. It is a new one, but you have to embrace the technology. Critically important, we didn't touch on it. The technology is not the problem. The issue about implementation of AI is change management. And that's what you have to do. You have to, management has to change their approach. And that is absolutely key. It's not the technology. The technology is going to continue to improve. The willingness to embrace it is about changing management.
Well, we'll add that as well to the list.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks,
Sir Martin Sorrell, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Come.